Hey guys, it's Eva and welcome to my February wrap-up. I'm going to tell you about all the books I read in February, and I read so many romances because of Valentine's Day. I read 13 books this month, and I did read some fantasy because I like to read fantasy in the wintertime, and I did read some other contemporary novels as well. So let's get started with the first contemporary novel. It is Us Against You against Fredrik Backman, and I did do a full review. If this isn't up yet, then it'll be up soon, the review. But this one is just following all the characters we fell in love with in Beartown and what happens to a town after it's kind of been split apart, where some people took sides, or what happens to a town after their reputation has been ruined by a rape, and what happens to the rape victim and her family and the hockey team. And so we follow a lot of the same old characters like Bobo and Benji. And then you also follow quite a few new characters. There's a lot of new plot twists and new characters. This book is a lot more political than the first one, even more so. You do follow some of the politicians around for a little bit. And you get really more into who these kids are and who they want to be and where they want to go and how much they do love hockey. And then you also meet some characters that aren't so nice in this one as well, just like the last one, but you kind of love them. You kind of find them endearing, especially at the end. I did. I found a lot of them endearing that weren't very nice characters, or it was supposed to be like the bad guys of the town kind of thing. And the only thing I could say about it was in the middle, where the politicky stuff was in, that part drug out a little bit too long, but I could see why it was needed in the book. But there's one particular political character that I just thought that one drug on a little bit long. So I think I gave it a lower score. I think it's a 4.5 because I usually give his books 5 out of 5. But I loved it. If you read Beartown, I would absolutely suggest reading it. The next book is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste. And this book was really hyped up. And that's what drew me in. The cover is really pretty. And I heard that it might be kind of literary fiction, that it was done so well. But we follow in the 1970s this Chinese family that doesn't necessarily fit in because the mom is a white blonde mom and there's not a lot of mixed race couples in the town they live in. They don't have any other Asian or Oriental people. So they kind of stick out a bit like a sore thumb. But the very first line is Lydia's dead. So one of the sisters has died. And you don't know why, if she's murdered, if she's killed, but it's the whole story of the people and the family, and really how dysfunctional the family is. And it's sort of heartbreaking and sad how the lack of communication evolved to this young girl's death. And I just didn't connect with it. I didn't love any of the characters in particular. I wasn't rooting for any of them. I didn't want to know more about them. It's a particularly dark book too, and so I think when dark books, for me, I have to have more a depth with the characters, and a lot of these characters, they're not very depth characters. They're very one-sided. There wasn't multifacets to a lot of the characters. They were just kind of very this is how I am kind of characters, especially the mom. She reminded me of a robot or something. So, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and read more by this author because I thought she did a really good job writing this story. I just didn't love the characters in this particular story. And I think I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 or a high 2 out of 5. The next book is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang, and this follows Stella Lang and Michael Fawn, and it's a story about a girl who's autistic. I also did a book review on this one as well. If you want to check it out, I'll link it down below. But it follows a girl who is autistic, and she hires a male prostitute to teach her how to be in a more loving relationship and basically how to have good sex. But yeah, it's quite shocking, and it is a really steamy read. It is a romance read. I think the author does have autism, and so I liked that it was an authentic read. I really did like this romance read. It was one of the best romances I've read this year. I just thought there were some points in the story that were a little bit lacking for me. I thought all of her past boyfriends were really one-sided and really kind of evil and characterized. And I thought that I didn't like just kind of the regular tropes. I don't think they were necessary in the story, where there's a lot of wealth and they're beautiful people and wealth can fix things. So those things kind of bug me about the story as well. But overall, I really liked it. It was a good romance story, and I'd recommend it to those who like steamy romances. The next book is The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye, and this book tells the story of Vika, Nikolai, and Pasha. Pasha is the soon-to-be king. Vika and Nikolai are the magicians. So in this story, only one magician can live in a country and be the king's and be the king's enchanter. I think they call them instead of magicians. And so Nikolai and Vika, Nikolai and Vika have to battle it out to see who wins. So it's kind of a high stakes adventure magician game. And it does remind me, a lot of people said it reminded me of the Night Circus. It does remind me of that same style of the Night Circus, but I wouldn't like put it off just because it was written like that. This book I thought was easier to read than the Night Circus. I don't think it was as well done. It wasn't as complex. The magic wasn't as fun, but I liked the characters. I felt a little bit invested in the characters. I didn't believe the love triangle in it. Like, not for a second. It wasn't a very believable love triangle, but I do like Nikolai and Vika together. I liked Nikola's character the best. He was like very overcoming in his life, where he had somebody that didn't really like him and that raised him and helped him become the magician he is, and he was poor and he didn't have any of the advantages of being royalty or anything like that, but he was still a really nice guy and a respectful guy and wanted to do the right thing. And so that was the character I liked the most, but I would definitely suggest checking this out if you haven't heard about it already. It's been all over YouTube for years, but I did enjoy this one. I had 3 books by Jenkins Reid. They are romance books, and usually I'm pretty harsh and critical on romance books, but I love the way Jenkins Reid writes, and she writes very complimentary characters for romance books, and like I understand why the characters are actually together. When True Loves is a story is about Emma, Sam, and Jesse. So Emma is, in the very beginning of the story, Emma meets Sam when she's really young, but she doesn't interested in Sam because her sister says something about it and she can't like what her sister likes or something like that. And then she spots Jesse, and it's kind of like a love at first sight, and she falls in love and they get married. And then after they've been married for about a decade, Jesse dies in a plane crash. And so then she kind of has to move on from that. And then finding her next love is Sam. And then in the middle of Sam, and it's been years and years, Jesse shows back up because he didn't actually die. And so it's kind of like, what is she going to do? Is she going to go back with her first true love, or is she going to go back with her second true love? And I won't give it away. This book did make me angry afterwards. I didn't like it. I don't know. Like, I did like one particular boy over the other boy, but still it made me angry for some reason in the end. I think that's why I gave it a lower rating, but I still really liked her writing. The story moves really quickly. I can read her novels in like a half a day. Absolutely love them love her as a romance writer, and I'm so excited to read more of her. And I think I have a few on my list for this coming March, which I'm excited about. The next book was Maybe in Another Life by Jenkins Reid, and I liked this one even better. This one I didn't think I'd like. I usually don't like these kind of stories because it's a split story. Like if I made this decision and I went out with this guy, or if I made this decision and I went out with this guy, how would my life lead and where would my life take me? And this follows the story of Hannah, Ethan, and Henry. And Hannah, the story is more centralized around Hannah, obviously. And Ethan is like her boyfriend that she always had a thing for. And they broke up just because they were like going to college. And then she comes back to this town kind of lost. She doesn't know what she wants to do in her life or where she wants to live in her life. And she doesn't really have a great connection to family. So one night she either has to decide, should I go with Ethan or should I like move on and find somebody else? And tragedy kind of sticks. Like one way, it starts out really, really good. So she takes one path and you get to kind of pick the path. And one path goes really, really well. And then it drops down and it goes pretty bad for a while. And then it's going to go again. And then the next one goes really bad for a while. And then it picks up and it goes really good for a while. And then it's good. And I didn't hate the story for like not being able to choose between two guys. I usually kind of hate that or am angry about something or some point of the story. For some reason at the end of this one, I didn't hate that there was 2 paths left open, that there wasn't one guy or another one. I don't know why, I didn't mind it at all. Which I have to give like huge credit for that one because I usually do. And which leads me into the 3rd book I read by Jenkins Reid, and one of the last romances I think I read. And it was Forever Interrupted. And I think this was her debut novel, and I read this one last. So this one follows Ben Ross, Elisa Porter, and Susan Ross. And again, in the very first few pages, you know that, and also on the synopsis, you know that she has a World War I romance with Ben Ross, gets married, doesn't tell her family, doesn't tell his family, and then he dies right afterwards. So it's all about her healing process, and then along comes in her mother-in-law. And I love that her and her mother-in-law kind of have this like disjointed, not perfect relationship at all, obviously, because she didn't even know she had married her son. And they kind of go through a whole grieving process together. And this book made me so happy and then so sad, because this goes from the future, or not the future, the present to the past constantly, because you start out in the present and then he dies and go to the past. And it's so sad though. So you better be happy when they're falling in love, and then all of a sudden you're really sad because he's dead and they're grieving about it. And I've never cried so much like in a book, just like on and off and on and off. Maybe I was having an emotional day, but I don't usually cry at books. Like, even when something's really sad, I don't usually cry. And so I absolutely loved it. I think she did a phenomenal job of writing it. And for a debut novel, I'm not going to say anything critical about it. It was done really well. I was so impressed. It was so smooth. Usually, sometimes you prefer things, like you prefer the present or you prefer the past, but this one I didn't. They were like so smooth. It was just, she did really, really good transitions, and I loved both sides of the story. And yeah, I really like this one. This one, out of all the three I read, I would recommend reading this one. If you guys are Evelyn Hugh fans, that's my next one on the list. And that one was huge. That one was like a breakout star. So I hope I get to that one in March. So the next book I read was After by Anna Todd. And this one just caught my eye. I think I had heard things about it, but it caught my eye because the movie preview came up. And I was like, oh, it's a book, so I got to read the book first. And this book was, like, I guess, phenomenally well done on fan fiction, and got so many reads, and congratulations to the author. This book tells the story of Tessa and Hardin, and Tessa is this girl who has a kind of a serious relationship and knows where she's going and knows what she wants in life, or she thinks she knows what she wants in life, goes to college and meets this bad boy, Hardin. And what does she do? Does she end the other relationship, or does she go with the bad boy, and where does that lead her? Kind of the story. And can she still keep up like who she is, almost, in a way? But the story, I had so many problems with it. In the very beginning, I saw a lot of grammatical errors, which I can get past, especially for a debut model. That's not a big thing, but it kept going on. And the storyline seemed, towards like the middle, it got really repetitive. It was like he hurt her and she pushed him away, and then he would like grow as a person, and then he'd hurt her and then she'd push him away and he'd grow as a person. But it seemed like she was never growing as a person, and like she was growing in certain ways, but not like maturity. He was really hateful and aggressive, which I didn't like in the story as well, and he wasn't like maturing from that a lot of the time. And so yeah, I didn't like the amount of abuse, I guess, in the story that was going on. I didn't like want them to be together, like, especially by the end. I wasn't, I mean, usually that's what you want in a romance book. You're like, oh no, they just had a misunderstanding. That wasn't the case this time. I had a really hard time with this. I hope the movie is wonderful, and I'm still gonna watch it. I might be interested in reading the next one. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think there's 4 of these stories, but I'm not sure. It's just because this book was so long. If the next ones are shorter, I think I might read them, because I know a lot of people have liked them and a lot of people have read them over and over and over. The next book was Home for Unwanted Girls by Joanna Goodman. And this one was a historical fiction piece that I read. And this tells the story about how in Canada, there were orphanages that changed into asylums and changed into mental institutions so they could get paid more by the state. And these orphanages were ran by nunneries and like cities and stuff. And so this follows a story about 2 people who, I guess the French and the English like didn't really intermix then, but it follows the story of a young girl who was born by a French and English man, or French woman and English man, and her father the whole time is like, do not go with a French man. And she really respects her father and loves her father and wants to become like her father. And her name is Maggie, but she does fall in love with this boy, and his name is Gabriel, and she ends up getting pregnant really young. And then the third story is about Elodie. So you hear from Maggie and Elodie the most. Elodie is her daughter, who she gives away and ends up in an orphanage, and then ends up going through that cycle of going through an orphanage into an asylum. I really liked this story. I thought it was quite long, but I did really like this story. I love reading historical fiction pieces, especially pieces that I haven't read before. It is like a very long, like decade story, and it's very heartbreaking and sad. But Maggie kind of has a pretty good life for most of it. I mean, she's very sad and broken up that she gave away her first daughter, and that she was like split up from Gabrielle, and Gabrielle moves on and moves to the city and marries somebody else, and then she moves to the city and kind of grows up and marries somebody else, and then she stumbles across Gabrielle again, and then she tells him, and then they go on looking for Elodie. Elodie's story is so sad. And she has friends that are killed and given lobotomies, and there's a lot of oppression and stuff. The only critique I'd have on this story in the end was like Elodie didn't seem to have many problems afterwards. I would think as a character she would, but maybe that's what the writer wanted her. She wanted her just to be a naturally hopeful person who was a survivor, I guess, because Elodie does end up as a pretty stable person, like, and she is pretty successful in life. And the story does have a happy ending, so if that one interests you, I'd definitely check it out. It was historical fiction. It was good. It was a lot different than a lot of other historical fiction, so if you're looking for a piece like that, I would definitely recommend the read. And then the next one I read was When It's Real by Erin Watt. I think I read the Princess series by her, and they were some steamy romance reads, and I thought they were done pretty good. So I was interested in reading this one. This one was a standalone novel by her, and it was about a rock star. And his management or publicist wants him to have a fake relationship with a real girl to like approve his public image. And so that's what the whole story is about, is this real girl who has a real boyfriend and him having this fake relationship with and it's a will they won't they story. It is not instant love. There is it's a hate to love trope, definitely. I thought she did well again for this. I didn't think these were as good as the royal stories, but I mean, as a standalone novel, it was pretty good. And it was good it's like an easy romance read, like all her reads are so easy, just like Taylor Jenkins reads, I think, and I definitely recommend it for romance reads. Okay, so number 11, we're getting pretty far along here, was Circe. And Circe was a fictional piece written about the goddess Circe, but it was taken a lot from myths and legends. So it was a mythical piece, and I wanted to read this because I heard so many good things about the story of Achilles and how well the author did with it. And I thought this story was done pretty well, especially with how little we kind of know of Circe. I mean, she's mentioned in a lot of great epics like the Odyssey, but I thought the author did a pretty good job. The only thing is the pacing. Like, the book felt too long for what we knew, and there was like stuff kind of stuck in it that wasn't helpful to the story, and I didn't need to know and I didn't want to read, so I kind of found myself skimming sometimes. And those parts were just like more in the beginning. In the beginning, it's quite laborious length that she puts in to make sure you know that they're gods and that everything is kind of easy, and they never want for anything, and Circe just doesn't fit in with her family, but she goes along with this thing for centuries and centuries. And how lavish the houses are, like when you read how lavish one house was, I didn't need to go on. And how petty this like squabble is, and some of those squabbles had nothing to do with her, nothing to do with Circe's story, that I was just like kind of uninterested in. It wasn't tying me in, and I found Circe really plain in the beginning. It wasn't for the lack of the author's writing. The author did a phenomenal job writing. She's a really good writer, and her poems are really well done. It's just, I just didn't find that part of the story. It was just the timing and the pace of the story in the beginning I really didn't like. And then you find Circe on Aiaia, and that's where a lot of her growth comes in, and she almost grows up kind of like a human, and she learns how to live on her own, and she fall in love and have kids and all that kind of stuff. And she meets Odysseus and what she's learned from her past and some of the eviler things she did in her past when she was living among the gods. And I thought she did a good job with the ending as well. I liked this book, and I really do still want to read the Song of Achilles, because I heard that was done even better. It's just the only thing that caught me up, and the only reason I think I gave it a 3 out of 5, and I think it was just because of the pacing on this book. But if you like myths and legends, I think retellings of myths and legends are so much easier to read than just reading like the straight up facts, like Edith Hamilton's mythology or something like that. I find them, you kind of want to, you feel a little more connected to the character, I find, in retellings as well. So I definitely go ahead and give it a read if you're into the myths and legends retelling. And yeah, I'll definitely be reading more by this author. And then the last two books I read, and then I read part of the last one, were the fantasy novels that I really wanted to get through, and I almost finished them, but I just finished the last one. It's the first day of March, and I read Siege and Storm and Shadow and Bone. Shadow and Bone was the first one by Leigh Bardugo, and Siege and Storm was the second in the series. You follow Alina, and these books are written in verse. So if you've read other Leigh Bardugo books, she doesn't naturally write in verse, I think. These were her first books. These were her debut novels, and I have to say, I do not like the writing in verse, and I don't love the character Alina. When I did finish Shadow and Bone follows Alina, and she's this girl that kind of has nothing going for her in life, and she wants this guy, and she's an orphan. Nobody really wants her. She just is kind of following through with life and where people tell her and where she goes. And then all of a sudden, everything flips on its head, and everybody wants her, and she becomes sort of like the saint in a way, and she has this power that only is very unique and nobody else has it, and it's one thing that could save her realm, which the story isn't quite as expanded, because I did read Six of Crows and Ravaka, however you say that, because I did read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom before these, and I have to say, I don't know if I would have liked these more if I read them first, because I read those ones and they were so well done and it was so well expanded on that entire universe she's created. I absolutely love those two stories. These ones I just didn't like. These ones were faster reads. They were faster reads written in first person, but I just, at the end of this book, I was really unsure of what I felt about it. And I know the more I read Leigh Bardugo, the more I get into her books, the more I like them. So I had kind of higher hopes for Siege and Storm, but I ended up feeling almost the same way. It's just, I wasn't invested in the characters or Alina's story. And then the romances, like, I liked Mal. I know a lot of people don't like Mal, but I liked Mal in the end. But I just wasn't invested. And this one has 3 guys that she may possibly end up with. And in the end, I kind of didn't care. I was like any of them. Like, I wasn't invested in any 3 of them in this story in Siege and Storm. Siege and Storm is more about some really evil things have happened, and she is running with one of the guys away, and then she decides, no, I'm not going to run. I'm going to save my country. And at the same time, at the beginning of the book, I didn't care. I was like, do you need to save your country? Because I wasn't just passionate about it as I was in Crooked Kingdom and Six of Crows. I absolutely love the author. I did finish the series, and I will definitely read more of the author. It's just these ones were not my favorite. I just wasn't as invested in the story. I like it though, like, because they were easy to read, and it was like a back piece of the story, and I know these are coming out on Netflix. And so, I mean, I did not like the story. It just wasn't my favorite by the author. And those are all 13 books I read in, if you stayed until the very end, all 13 books I read in February. Hopefully March goes just as well for reading. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.